We've talked about how complex human motivation is and how not one theory can explain it all. And here's a brief description of some of the weaknesses with the drive reduction theory. And there are a lot of we call them social motivation, and here are these concepts connected to social motivation that the drive reduction theory doesn't account for. But we're going to study the first three, first two, in a little bit of detail. So there's a psychologist named David McClellan, and he started getting interested in the concept of motivation. And what he was interested in is what he calls psychological needs, right? These are not biological requirements for the survival of the species like water, sex, and so forth, food. But obviously, anyone who, in our culture, who has been a student or has been a worker, notices that there's a difference between students and workers. Some have a high level of motivation to achieve and do well. Others have moderate, others have low. We've also noticed that there are people who, most of us are social and require and desire relationships with other human beings. And we also know there's a difference between that level among individuals. Some people are much more social in nature, some a little bit less so. So we're going to take a look at, and then there's also the need for power. We're going to take a look at the first two, and here are some definitions for you over here. Remember, you can pause me at any time to take note of those definitions. But let's look at the need for achievement and some of the interesting research around this need for achievement. So first of all, how do we measure the need for achievement? There are numerous tests, but some of the most popular are called TAT, or apperception tests. You don't need to know too much about those. They're projective tests. We might even do one in class. The other interesting thing about research with people who have high need for achievement is what they choose, the type of task they choose, and what they tend to avoid. So they tend to avoid things that are too easy or things that are impossible, meaning that they can never achieve because it's it's out of the question to actually be successful. They like moderate to high goals. The other thing is they tend to have an internal locus of control. Remember, we learned that? Meaning that they attribute their success and their failures to themselves and to their effort. Another researcher who's done a lot of work on this is a woman named Dweck, and she's really studied achievement motivation in terms of students' beliefs about themselves and about intelligence, because she believes that their sense of self and the sense of how they view intelligence goes a long way to explaining if they continue to have a high need for achievement. And what she found was those who continue to have a high need for achievement, they view intelligence as something that can be altered, something that can improve, not as a thing they are born with that is fixed and unchangeable, meaning I'm smart or I'm not smart, I can't get any better at school or at my job. And if you want an analogy, people who see intelligence as malleable tend to think of it as something like a workout, like running. If you're running a marathon, maybe your first marathon, your time will be high, will not be very good, and you can lower your time with more working out, more practicing. The same view holds for those who have a high need for achievement. That's their view of intelligence, that their effort can get them someplace. So they tend to be resilient, which is another important word. Now, when we're talking about high need for achievement, we don't necessarily mean that these people have high grades or have the best jobs. There is a correlation between high need for achievement and good grades. There definitely is. You need to get that down. However, what could happen is if you are used to success as a student, but you have this mindset, a fixed mindset, and you experience failure, we've learned this too, learned helplessness can set in. And students can be turned off to actually trying to get out of their comfort zone or attempting reasonably challenging goals. So that's really important to understand. So again, the need for achievement is linked with personality factors. Locus of control is one of them, and people's beliefs about intelligence. And these again are psychological needs, often under social motivation in certain textbooks.